Welcome to the 13th episode of Marketing Minutes. I am Eva Janata. I'm the founder of Simply Put Digital Marketing, where I work with women entrepreneurs and business owners to grow their communities and businesses online by leveraging their content stories and audiences to get better leads and more engagement. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to introduce Alaura Weaver. There she is. She's sitting outside, which I think is fabulous. So Alaura is a story-based copywriter and content strategist who specializes in helping businesses speak human. As a contributor, Copy Hackers, Copy Blogger, Founder Magazine, and Conscious Company, Alaura has written about the impact that storytelling can have on your business and how you use your story to create meaningful relationships with your customers. You can learn more about working with Alaura at wordweaverfreelance.com. And I do have a link to that in the comments below if you can't wait to go check out her website. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting because I was telling Alaura before we started recording that I came across her on Medium earlier this year, and I was really impressed by an article she wrote after the Facebook algorithm apocalypse, if you will, when all online marketers were panicking and were really angsty. And she wrote a very thoughtful piece about how the algorithms change and its emphasis on prioritizing engagement that is about connection and empathy and building relationships is actually a really good thing for the marketing world. So I'm really excited to talk to you about marketing. So I always like to start by the good stuff. Obviously, you've been in business for a long time and you're very experienced with what you do. So I'm curious if you could start by sharing with us either the best marketing tip from your experience, whether it's a specific tactic or an overall strategy that's worked really well for you. Can you share something that you've experienced yourself or that you've used for clients that has worked really, really well?
Yeah, the best marketing tip that I can give, and that has been echoed by, billionaires like Jeff Bezos, and some other really great tech founders who are in, these rapid stages of growth, is to actually just talk to your customers, to not just give them surveys. Surveys are great, but those aren't qualitative. You need qualitative data because as marketers, we're kind of like a cross between anthropologists and sociologists, as well as business people. So if we're not having these quality conversations with people where they're expressing themselves as individuals, then it's hard for us to bring that empathy to our work. And from what I've seen, the companies that have the most contact with their customers, their most interactions that are genuine, are the ones that have the longest relationships with their customers. And because they're listening to their customers, they're able to innovate faster too, because they're all of a sudden changing their focus from we need to put out products to we need to serve our customers and create solutions that transform along with their lives.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and is a reminder that the quote unquote old way of doing marketing, what I think of as the madman way, where you are in creating a need or playing on people's pain points and kind of making them feel a lack in order to urge them to buy, is different than what you're describing, which is about empathy and compassion and deep listening. And the way I think of it is almost like being just a friend to your customer or your client.
Well, yeah, I call it, there's meaningful relationships and then there's transactional relationships, right? And the transactional relationships are the ones that were encouraged through Mad Men and other like direct response advertising that's very high pressure sales. And you know what? There is a place for at some point where you can say, okay, you know what? I've laid out all of this information to you. And now I'm going to trust you to make the best decision that you can. But here's the case that we're playing to you. And then you put on the high pressure sales, right? But you have to establish a trusting relationship with that person before you can start making them feel bad about themselves, you can't make, don't make people feel bad about themselves for not using your product. It's just because they're not the good fit for your product, or your product isn't a good fit for their lives. It's nothing, they say it's nothing personal, it's just business when people are kind of screwing other people over. But it's the other way around. The customer, it's like, it's not personal brand, although sometimes the values might not align, but it's about creating these meaningful relationships where you genuinely are there to deliver value to the customer. And the transaction happens when they're like, okay, great. This value that you've been delivering to me is fantastic. Where else can we go in this relationship?
And so you mentioned surveys. Obviously, that's one way to listen and to have a communication with your customer. And the answers you get to a survey question is going to depend on how the question is phrased a lot of the time, or just the position that the answerer is in at that moment. Mm-hmm. And I could think of a lot of different ways beyond that you can connect with your customer more meaningfully and build a longer term connection with them. Mm-hmm. Is there a certain tactic you've experienced that you find really effective for building that relationship?
Yeah, well, when you're in a small business situation, it's a lot easier to reach your customers, right? Because there's not thousands, there's not millions of them. And so, obviously just do an email outreach and just reaching out and seeing who your best customers are and saying, I value your time. I want to give you some kind of incentive for having a conversation with me about your experiences with us. And then having, we have these like receipts that say, fill out a survey and get a coupon or something like that. Well, maybe make it a little more meaningful gift for that and make it about having a conversation instead of checking off stuff. The other thing is for small businesses, and pretty much I can talk about how you can scale that up in a minute, but just go to the communities where people feel like they belong and where they feel free to talk about what they care about. And you're going to get huge insight beyond when people are kind of on their guard and consciously trying to phrase their answers to a company, right? So if, for example, I'm a business coach and I want to start teaching freelancers, right? Mm-hmm. I would go to like a freelance copywriting group on Facebook and see what are the questions that pop up over and over and over again. Okay, so one of the questions that pops up, and I will tell you now, is how much should I charge for this? It is the number one question. So if you as a business coach can say, okay, this is something they really care about, and I can either provide a course or offer a webinar, or part of my service is getting them to a point where they are comfortable quoting their clients. They're confident in quoting their clients enough that they can make a profit, but not so much that they're going to scare them away. That's an amazing service that you can offer them. And it's inspired by listening to these people.
Yeah, I can see how, obviously that approach will inform all of your content writing. It will give you all of the fodder you need, the inspiration, the detail you need to write your blog posts, write your emails, write your social media posts. Yeah,
and you can also grab really emotional language from these conversations too. Another example was I just recently ran a workshop on persona building, and I have a Slack group that I belong to, and one of my colleagues in it was complaining about editing blogs from other people. And she says, I just don't want to be stuck editing until the cows come home. I was like, hello, that's copy gold right there. That's a headline. Don't get stuck editing until the cows come home. Mm-hmm. That's a landing page. So that's it doesn't mean that I'm not creative, which I am. I'm just able to spot the stories. And my ethos is, or not ethos. Ethos is a different story. My motto is, your story is in your struggle. So go where the struggle is. Go where people are talking about their struggles, and you will find that place of empathy. You will find that language that you're seeking to find when it comes to using something phrased in a not cliche way. You'll find ideas for topics. You'll find ways of phrasing benefits for your products. Where you go for the struggle is where you're going to discover all of those things.
That's fantastic. And I'm reminded of another article of yours I really like on Medium, which I'll share in the comments, which is titled Finding Your Ideal Customer, a Step-by-Step Guide to Building a Pre-Launch Startup Buyer Persona. And in there you have an exhaustive list of places you can go, specific places you can go to find this language you're talking about, to identify the struggle, to see the questions being asked. And at the end, you offer a super valuable content upgrade in the form of an opt-in for a
worksheet.
A worksheet. That's right. It's a spreadsheet, I think. Yeah. So I'll share that in the comments.
It acts as kind of a checklist, so you know what the questions are you should be asking when you're creating this customer persona. It's not the template. A lot of times people are like, oh, here's a pretty template, so you can put a picture of Marketing Maggie on it and all that kind of stuff. And I do use a different tool for that I'm happy to tell you guys about if you want to put the link in. It's called Extensio, X-E. No. Oh, I'll have to give it to you later. I can't even spell it right now. But they have really great drag and drop persona templates. But my worksheet is not that. It's a way of going through and answering the questions.
Okay. Yeah, I'll share that because I looked at it myself and I was very impressed. I will admit, I've several times used this kind of research-based, going to the communities, identifying the struggle approach, and have been intimidated by how time-intensive it is. And I'm curious if and that's why service providers like yourself exist, because not every business owner wants to spend those hours doing the research and finding those bits of language. When you do this work, do you have a way of keeping yourself from diving too deeply into a rabbit hole? Do you use a timer?
Analysis paralysis?
Well, yeah, because you could research forever.
Oh, yes. And I'm a total research nerd. So yeah, there's a point where I'm like, okay. And there's actually a canvas that I like to use now that I need to update the worksheet to incorporate this into it. And it's called Jobs to Be Done. And it helps you really focus on the use case scenarios that influence a buying decision. So you're not you're not figuring out your customers' pets' names.
Right.
You're talking about what is happening in your life that leads you to purchasing or hiring us, or whatever it is that leads you to that first interaction and then the decision to have a transaction with us. And it's an interview technique, and it helps you really center on that instead of going off and totally going into analysis paralysis. But you also have to realize that your persona or any kind of information you have in your customer is a living document, right? It's going to change over time. So as you're learning more about your customer, you add to it. So you don't have to have a complete picture, but you certainly have to have a robust picture to begin with. And then as you learn more and more and interact more with your customers, add to it, take away what you think it isn't relevant anymore, or maybe they've grown beyond that phase and now they're in a different phase of their lives.
And what would you say to a business owner? Maybe she's experiencing, like you just alluded to, a pivot in her ideal customer, or maybe she feels torn between several different ideal customers or buyer personas. How do you help your clients narrow their focus or put boundaries around it, or work through a transition process when the world feels kind of new and full of possible buyer personas again?
Yeah. So this is probably the biggest struggle my clients deal with, because they want everybody to buy from them.
Right.
Trying to get them to focus on, especially startup founders, right? Just focus on getting to your first 10, 20, 50 customers. Where are they going to come from? Are they going to come from everywhere? Probably not.
Right.
You want to focus on the group that will benefit the most from your product or service and is willing to pay for it, right? Because unfortunately, most of us don't run nonprofits.
Right.
And we have to be able to at least deliver the product or service that we have at cost and profit. So you have to do that, and it's about testing and treating your business a little bit like an experiment, and treating failure not as I have a failed business. You don't have a failed business just because you go in the wrong direction. That just means that you have an opportunity to learn and to change, to iterate, and to optimize. So that's another kind of fundamental belief that I have about life. When I'm talking to my kids, I talk about that. I'm like, that's a mistake is there for you to learn from. It's not for you to beat yourself up over. It's not for you to stop doing everything just because you failed at this one thing. So with that said, if you're getting to a point in your business where you have reached critical mass with those 10, 20, 50 customers, and you realize, there's more opportunity over there, absolutely. Do the same thing you did before, though. Learn as much as you can about the customers that you're going after. And either you can adopt them into your personas, and you have multiple personas now, or you pivot all together, and hopefully you find a way of taking care of the people who got you to that point. So yeah, there's that type of thing, and the struggle with my clients often comes into. I had one client that they were shooting for the stars. They hadn't even launched their product yet, and I'm like, look, I'm telling you, this group over here that you haven't even thought about yet will take you to the next level because they will not stop talking about your product. And they didn't see the value in pursuing that because they were thinking enterprise level clients, right? And there's so many other products. I mean, it's about competition too, right? When your competitors are going over here to enterprise level stuff and you're just starting, why would you try to go after these big fish when you've got all of this little part of the pond to dominate? So again, it's about figuring out where the most opportunity is, not for you to like sell to, right? To where the biggest accounts are. It's about where the most people are that you can serve where you are right now. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so many gems from that. Okay, so I want to jump back a couple sentences ago. You were talking about failure and mistakes and how those aren't the end of the world. That's just how you learn. And I completely agree. And I think it's important to be reminded of that regularly. However, there are some marketing strategies or tactics that they fail multiple times, or they just don't work, or you hate them, or something about them is not a good fit. And I think it's equally important to talk about those as it is to talk about the stuff that works really well. So I'm curious if you could share, what is a tactic or an experience that that was just terrible for marketing?
Well, I come from a business to business background as a sales rep, and then I went into marketing. But part of my job as a sales rep was to go out and sell advertising to small businesses. And it was all about getting to the number, right? It was getting the quota and not taking that person's genuine needs and limitations into consideration. Again, it's pushing that sale regardless of their situation. So I found myself trying to get this guy to buy a print ad in the phone book at the same time as smartphones were coming out, Google was out, and there was an economic crisis. And this was the Detroit area. So all of these things, I mean, a phone book ad wasn't going to get this guy out of the mess that he was in. But, the shareholders of the company that I worked for demanded that we grow. And instead of adapting to the marketplace in some way, they just kept going in the same, same direction. They weren't changing anything, and they were treating the internet as kind of like this cherry on top, as opposed to, look, take your print ad money and really focus, be one of the first people to be a local on the internet. And the people that will be looking for you probably are the people who have the money, because they're early adopters. They're people who buy technology early. But that was not encouraged at all. So when you're maintaining the status quo, I think that's a terrible marketing tactic.
Yeah, that's a great example. And it's so comfortable to maintain the status quo and to do what you know. And it's scary and risky to try something new and unproven, but there's, you have to do that anyway if you want to move forward.
And you introduced me with saying that you were impressed with my article about Facebook, and I think that the marketing reaction to this was because they had settled into the status quo. Even though algorithms change all the time, it was still the status quo of, but reach, likes, and shares are the key metrics that we're seeking. But those aren't true metrics. Those are not indicators of how powerful and how much value you're delivering with your content. It's not connecting with people, because first of all, you've got the bots, you got the quick times, you got the trolls, and then you have the people who are just kind of like pre-scheduling their stuff, right? And they're just looking for the tags and sending it out, and that is not a true metric. So basically, if you're automating your marketing with an already automated platform, you're going to get automated response.
Right. And I think folks have gotten so seduced by the idea that social media marketing should be free because it was for a time, and it should be able to run itself, and we shouldn't have to try all that hard at it. And it should just, we got used to the way it worked early in the Facebook days when things were different. But of course, everything is changing, and we don't own these networks, and they're going to continue changing. That's the only thing we can rely on. And it strikes me, I'm wondering if you would agree with this statement, that my impression is that we all need to market less. And instead of just rolling out these articles or these memes or whatever, to take the time it takes to really empathize and have conversations and be really thoughtful and genuinely helpful, and do it maybe less, since it takes longer to produce that quality content. But that's, again, how you're going to actually serve people and be memorable.
Yeah, I mean, look, the tendency is to look for how you can mass produce things so you can reach the masses, right? But when you do that, you're diluting your ability to serve the people who most need it. And again, it comes back to that. So, we take a look at retail. The mass-produced items tend to be the lowest quality items. You look at food. The mass-produced food tends to be the least nutritional food.
Right.
So when you mass-produce something, you're removing the quality from it. And Lord knows I'm a big fan of tech. I mean, I've been a computer nerd forever. So I understand the power of automation. I think it's fantastic that there's artificial intelligence, although we have to be very careful about how we direct it, and what kind of world we're teaching them about, right? But when it comes to mass production, if you're treating your job as just output and not doing any input, and not considering who you're impacting and how you're impacting the world, then you're probably doing a disservice.
Yeah. Oh, I could wax eloquent about this all day long. I have so many, I get so riled up about this stuff because it's so important. And the online marketing world is so saturated. But it makes me really happy whenever I see a really good ad, a really thoughtful, clever, humorous piece of marketing material or campaign. And I also like to ask, in that vein, what is a great advertisement or Facebook promo or something you've been on the receiving end of as a consumer that has been doing it really well? Because some companies are getting this right.
And it's really hard for companies to win me over, since I'm so, I'm wise to their ways.
Yeah.
But I've been really impressed. In the tech side, I've been really impressed with Drift, which is a conversational platform people use for chats on their website, because they ooze transparency. They are letting everybody into their world. They have videos on LinkedIn. They have these just phenomenal podcasts. So they're everywhere, and they are in the B2B world. They're kind of killing it right now because of the approach that they're taking. But then, as far as like a consumer end type of brand, I've been impressed with Blue Apron. First of all, because they kind of disrupted the whole shopping and cooking experience by making things very, compact, and they're serving the needs of people who are aware of food waste, for example, and people who are aware of where your food is sourced. At the same time, because they knew that these people are probably going to be a little bit more educated, and they're going to be probably an NPR type of listener, they went and hit the podcast world like crazy. And so they became big supporters and sponsors of places like This American Life and Serial, and just the big podcasts that make, get into your head, and these experiences. They recognized the fact that people who love storytelling also find meaning in family meals, for example. They made that connection. It was such smart positioning. It was a really great example of positioning. And then just, you can tell they put all the thought into their packaging, anticipating problems. Their app is super easy to use, although, I've got some recommendations, but still, it's just their customer experience is seamless. And when you have a problem, if you need to talk to somebody, I actually got a subscription for Blue Apron for my 72-year-old mother. She's tech savvy enough that she spends all her life on Facebook, but she's not tech savvy enough to like use an app to contact, chat to somebody, right? So she uses the phone number. I know, it's crazy. And she tells me every time, oh, they're so nice. They take such good care of me. So that whole experience, and that's what I'm really thinking about with my own marketing, is how do you create this entirely seamless customer experience where they're not dropping the ball on customer service. Sometimes they may make a mistake on what kind of food they deliver. Like sometimes there might be an ingredient missing, but because their customer experience is so seamless, you're like, better luck next time, Whereas, I just got on the phone with my cable company.
Oh dear.
You ready for this one? Yeah. Already, you just have to say it. I wanted to unbundle my cable service, right? I was cord cutting. I did not need the TV. We never watched it. I said, I just want the internet. Of course, I got shifted over to somebody else in some other department. And this guy was just keeps trying to sell me on this bundle. And I'm like, I do not need it. I do not use it. I am not looking for a better deal. I just want to pay for the internet. Keeps hammering away. And I'm like, look, I know you're trying to reach your numbers, but it's not going to work with me. He puts me on hold for a half hour. And I can hear the man typing in the background and then stopping. And there's nothing happening on the other end. It was like this game. It's a game. It's this horrible, manipulative game. And it's making me, already my blood pressure's raising just talking about it, because I'm like, what kind of idiot do you think I am? So, two completely different services, two completely different companies, but this company over here, the cable company, has the opportunity to create a seamless customer experience if they cared, but they don't. They don't have a reason to, because they're monopolizing it. But, if they cared, they would. And I think that's what it comes down to with marketing is if you care, if you really do care about the impact you're making on people, then ask them questions, find out what's important to them, create the experience that they need to feel like they can trust you and that you are doing what's in their best interest.
This reminds me what you said about the whole customer experience. Customer service is its own thing, but it's also a huge part of marketing. And it reminds me of something you've mentioned before to me about the sales funnel is actually an hourglass. You hold their hand through this experience of going further and further into your funnel, but then once they drop through the funnel, so to speak, they're not just falling through the abyss. They have this other half of the hourglass where you want to make their experience working with you as pleasant as possible, as easy as possible. Right. So they really feel like they're being cared for, that their needs are being met, that they're valued. And
it's also, pragmatically, it's a self-perpetuating sales cycle that way, because I just spoke on Facebook Live about Blue Apron.
Right. They're not paying you for that.
They did not pay me. Oh, I wish they would, but they're not paying me. And, whoever's listening out there is going to go check out Blue Apron. Maybe.
Absolutely.
Go check them out. I'll give you a referral code. The point is, when you treat your customers like you care about them, they care enough about you to want to help you grow. And again, that's part of that meaningful relationship that we've been talking about. Instead of a transactional relationship with my cable company, which was like, I'm only as good as the dollars that I'm willing to spend with them.
Yeah.
And it's a terrible way to treat people. I mean, it's dehumanizing.
It makes everyone feel shitty.
Yeah, it is. It does. It's unfortunately, people out there shrug their shoulders and be like, whatever, it's a company. What do you expect? They're not, it's nothing personal. It's just business. No, it freaking is personal. This is my life. That was my money. They were trying to take my money. That money goes towards food for my kids. That goes towards my kids' education. But they felt like they were entitled to my money and that I wasn't allowed to say, stop, I need this money now. So yeah, it's personal. It is.
And thank goodness there are examples like Blue Apron, like many others, that are disrupting that status quo, that way of dehumanizing customers, that they're just dollars and cents and not caring about their time, etc. It segues nicely into the final question I wanted to ask you, which is, if you could share a time in your business experience where you had to do something, maybe it was disruptive, something where you had to really trust your instincts, go against the grain, do business in maybe an unconventional fashion. I really like to hear examples of women in business having to trust themselves and rely on their instincts rather than follow all the free advice that we're being bombarded with or everyone else's opinion, but really stick to our own values and our own opinion.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm pretty strong. I have strong opinions about things. And
I do too.
And I'm not afraid to share them. And a lot of times, especially in the freelancing world, especially in the copywriting world, you're encouraged to keep your politics to yourself because you never know who's going to hire you. And I want to know who's going to hire me, because what I'm doing for them is helping them make an impact in the world. And if that impact isn't aligned with my values, then I'm doing something that's completely against my moral obligations to the world that I want to help shape.
Right.
So I'm on Twitter. I will tweet out my political stances. I will retweet stuff that I believe in. I'm a strong intersectional feminist. I am also somebody who's the story editor for a podcast called Inflection Point, which is all about achieving equality.
Awesome.
So and I think that, especially in this day and age, No judgment to people who aren't comfortable taking a stand. But I do feel like that if you're not taking a stand, if you do have followers, that you're I don't want to say part of the problem, but I feel like if you're not being brave, you're not being courageous, you're, again, that status quo. You're settling into the status quo. And right now, for so many people, the status quo is not acceptable. And so when you are helping to reinforce the status quo, you're actually harming people by doing that.
And I've heard too, state of Arizona, and choosing between candidates can be challenging. And someone said to me recently that the candidates that are embracing the margins, that are taking more radical and outspoken stances on issues, are actually garnering more support than those who maintain the status quo, who tend toward center. And the same has been true with brands. There are so many examples of brands that are, I heard of one recently. It was started by a college student. I think it was called Lip Slut, and it was a lipstick company, and the proceeds were donated to like anti-Trump nonprofits or something. There was some very political angle, and this company is going gangbusters. I'll share a link in the comments later. And it's just an example that brand activism and taking a stance is drawing more customers, like-minded, values-driven clients and customers to your business. Even if it feels a little risky, it's curious that we're seeing it now really pay off to take that kind of brave stance and to draw a line in the sand and stand for what you value.
But let me point out that if you're going to take a stand, you better be willing to walk the walk, right? This isn't a marketing ploy. This isn't, I'm doing this because this is the popular thing to do right now. It's trendy. Pepsi,
cringe.
Bad Pepsi. You have to, I just heard somebody say, you have to pray with your feet,
Wow.
I'm drawing a blank as to who said it, but I think it has to do with Inflection Point, my podcast. I was listening to an interview with one of the guests, and she said, you have to pray with your feet. If you genuinely want to see change in this world, you have to walk the walk. If you don't want to see change in this world and you're just being a mouthpiece for a marketing ploy, do us all a favor, do your company a favor, and don't bother. Because people who genuinely care will sniff it out, and you will become a Pepsi. And I'm sure there are some people like, well, Pepsi's sales aren't, affected at all by this. Okay, great. Again, this has to do with whether or not you care. Does Pepsi care about the impact that they made on people by kind of turning this into a shallow, trendy, political protest into this shallow, trendy thing that all the millennials are doing? Who did they impact by that? They delegitimized an entire movement, or they tried to they didn't try to, but they accidentally delegitimized a huge movement. I mean, this was after the Women's March, which was the largest mass demonstration in the history of humanity. And to turn that into an advertising campaign was very disrespectful. And I'm not a Pepsi drinker now. I'm one person who's not a Pepsi drinker now.
Right. And I mean, it's easy for people to dismiss those individual conversions away from a brand. But I remember years ago, Pop Chips had a commercial in which Ashton Kutcher showed up on the camera wearing brown face and pretending to be like a Bollywood director.
Holy moly.
Really gross. And Hassan Minaj tore him to shreds. And this was years ago. And I've never touched a Pop Chip since. Like, I'm just never going to buy a bag of their products. And I'm only one person, but those gauche those just missteps, those that are just so gauche and just so in such poor taste and so thoughtless, do have an impact. They do affect people for better or worse. And they get called.
It's a pattern, right?
Right.
It's nothing, these aren't just little individual moments. They're a reflection of a macrocosm of a pattern that happens when it comes to larger companies. especially ones that have like an in-house agency and they're just focusing on that that revenue or that that gross margin over just the relationships they're having with people. Again, it's about the customer relationships. It comes down to that. You pointed out earlier that customer service is its own thing, but actually, I kind of to segue, we're doing a master mind course, me and Nicole Desmarais, who's involved in growth hackers and product hunt and all kinds of SaaS companies. And it's really focusing on how you need to get customer success right from the beginning. Because when you create a model for customer success that goes along with your marketing and along with your customer outreach, that's how those relationships are built. And when you treat it as an after the sale type of experience, is when all of a sudden that turns into a lower value, a lower priority experience, right? Because, well, we need to grow. We need to get as many customers as we can. No, you need to keep as many customers as you can, especially for SaaS, because they are subscription-based. The longer you keep customers, the more money you make. So, yeah.
That's exciting.
In there. Yeah.
Okay, so you're starting. You and Nicole are doing a mastermind for software as a service products. And when is it starting? Is it coming up soon?
In a couple weeks, we have applications open right now. If anybody wants to go there, I can give you a little link.
Yeah, please. That would be great.
Just put it in after we.
Yeah, I'll throw it in the comments. Yeah.
So yeah, and it's specifically for early stage SaaS founders. So people who might not have found that product market fit, which is pretty much what we were talking about earlier.
Way to go full circle.
Yeah, segues, yay. And
well, thank you so much.
Thank you. I love talking with you.
Yeah, Alaura, this was great. I mean, I can already think of something after the fact and what I want to highlight in the blog post that I'll write about this, because it's such a valuable conversation. All of the different points we touched about marketing and relationships and being genuine when you're in your values as opposed to trendy. I'm just so grateful that you were able to share all of that with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. It was my honor to do so. And I hope you have a great day.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye.
Wow. Okay. So my mind is reeling a little bit. We really covered a lot with politics and calling out a bunch of different companies for better or for worse, and talking about a sales hourglass, a customer hourglass instead of a sales funnel, and so much to marinate on. So thank you very much for watching. If you have any comments, please, or questions, please put them in the comments. And please come back next episode. For episode 14, I'm going to be chatting with Rachel Brownlow Lund. She is a millennial women's leadership coach, and we're going to chat about her best and worst marketing tips for growing her successful coaching business. She recently has been doing a lot of public speaking. I'm really excited to chat about that aspect of her marketing work. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. And if you want to stay in the loop, I'd love to have you get the latest marketing tips from this show. And you can do that by signing up to receive a couple of emails from me. I just send tips about the latest marketing that we're learning about on the show and who we're interviewing next. And you can join that list right there at the little link I threw in the comments. So thank you again for watching and have a great weekend. Bye.